we have to talk about the love of your life, Kaye.
Oh, Bee, my dog.
Bee, no, Ian.
Oh,
there he is. And I have to say, I love Ian. I just love him.
That is classic Ian.
But he was not what you were looking for.
Well, it certainly wasn't what my mum was looking for, that's for sure.
She wasn't keen at the beginning, was she?
No, when he turned up in an East German sort of police officer. Remember we always used to go to army surplus stores?
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
Ian dressed out of the army surplus stores, or he always had some kind of weird thing in and like sort of tears in his jeans before it was trendy. It was just tears in his jeans. And I can remember my mum thinking, I was hoping for a pinstripe suit, which didn't come through the door. But yeah, no, well, he's a tennis coach, and we met at a tennis club. It's like a sub-Jackie Collins plot, isn't it?
But you had to chase him. You had to chase him a bit, didn't he?
No, I did not.
Oh, I thought he didn't like you.
No, you didn't like him, did you?
No, she liked him.
I remember you saying you thought
he liked her.
Her friend liked him. Tell us about that moment when you first touched.
Oh, this is getting creepy now. Just to say, it's not that I didn't like him.
She's gathered herself.
I will be coming back to that question, so don't think you're getting out of it.
No, but I'm just going to tell you, the reason that I wasn't sure of him was he was too slim. You know, and I was, you know, and he didn't want to be with a boy that was skinnier than you. I'm sorry, girls, but this was the late 80s. It's the way it was. And he was always suntanned because he spent half the year in Italy. So, you know, I'm white and pasty, and he was a skinny boy with his long legs. And so I thought, no, I'm not going there.
I thought he was so shallow.
And
I was shallow.
And you were giving him a lift somewhere, and you had your hand on the gear stick.
Yeah, OK, yeah, she loves it. Well, yeah, we went out for a pizza, I think, probably, and I did not think for 1 second that this was a date. We kind of knew different people. It never occurred to me it was a date. We had a perfectly nice evening. I gave him a lift home because I had a much nicer car than his, and his was awful. Told you I was shallow. And I was just sort of, you know, that bit where, right, you're going to get out of the car now, and so I had my hand on the gear stick ready to kind of accelerate and once he was out of the car, and he kind of put his hand on, he won't even remember this, put his hand on top of my hand on the gear stick, and suddenly I thought, oh.
Was it electric?
Maybe, no.
2 children later?
No. Well, they came 9 years later, so he wasn't exactly
electric.
So let's talk, because I know we've seen this clip on the show before, but for me, I'm really envious of this clip, because you interviewed Margaret Thatcher.
Yeah.
So tell us all about that. How did that come about?
Well, it was my first job with Central Television in Birmingham. And, you know, you're desperate to impress when you're in your first job. And I really wanted to be a political reporter. That was my thing. I was working on the political programme at the time. And you know, there was a big story at that point about how few women were getting into politics, but we had a female Prime Minister. And so I wanted to do a documentary about women in politics and why there were so few women in the Houses of Parliament. I think it was 4% at that time, I seem to remember. So I thought, I know what will impress the boss. I will write to the Prime Minister and see if I can get an interview. Never for a second, obviously, thinking that that would happen. So I wrote a letter. And, you know, a few weeks later, this letter came back to the office with the Downing Street stamp on the back saying, OK, on such and such a date, you have an hour with Margaret Thatcher in Downing Street. And that
wearing
was
an Elvis wig.
No.
Well, that's a basic roller wig, Jane.
What happened to your accent when you walked in the room, though?
That's BBC.
Yeah, I know.
Hello.
Well, it is funny thinking back to that time, because I fully admit, leaving university, and I went to Birmingham / London for like 4 or 5 years, and coming from Scotland at that time, I felt I needed to change my accent. Because there just weren't many, you know, real Scottish accents on television. There was kind of false posh Scottish accents, but there weren't any real Scottish accents. In fact, Lorraine Kelly, I have to say, you know, trailblaze, because Lorraine has always stuck to her accent, and I admire her for that. But I kind of felt obliged to change. I mean, I loved my colleagues in Birmingham. I had such a good time. But every time I walked in the newsroom in the morning, they'd go, "Hoots, aye, now the new mon," which was funny. I know it was funny, but it did in my head make me think,
and talking
I can't speak like this.
Lorraine, because of course Lorraine reported at Lockerbie.
She did, yeah.
And so did you. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I'd just gone up to Scottish Television. I'd only been there a very short time, and of course it was just before Christmas, 21st of December, and I was actually sent out to another story, another part of Glasgow, I think, and then we got a phone call to say there appears to be a military jet that has crashed around and somewhere in the borders near Lockerbie. So you just get diverted. I remember at that time we had the mobile phone, which was not mobile; it was the size of a suitcase. You'll remember it, Jane. And we're trying.
I think we've got a clip actually. Let's just have a quick look.
Yeah.
Every kind of emergency vehicle is here in the centre of Lockerbie. There's a fleet of ambulances waiting to ferry the injured to nearby hospitals, and RAF troops have been drafted in to search the surrounding countryside. There's no death or casualty toll as yet, but it's feared there'll be no survivors from the plane, and it's known a number of bodies have been taken into the town hall here.
And what did you see there, Kaye?
Well, I mean, I was way out of my depth. I think I was 25 then. But to be fair, even the most seasoned reporters were way out of their depth, obviously, with Lockerbie. I mean, more than 200 people died and terrible devastation in the town. I mean, it was like, I hate to say it, a horror movie, but it was, you know. And
did it almost feel unreal to you? I would just imagine
well, it was unreal. And I mean, I don't want to distress anyone with the stories, but I mean, clearly you did see people who had come out of the sky. You saw the cockpit. I mean, you saw the crew who were... I mean, it's probably a bit upsetting to say that to people. You know, things that you really couldn't compute with real life. But it was funny, it was little things as I walked around, because there was a huge crater that had been caused by the fuselage that had come down and the houses around that area. And I was walking around there, and I remember seeing a burnt-out washing machine. So this was a house that had been, you know, really totaled by the impact. And just seeing something so domestic, you know, that had been totally incinerated, those were almost the things that were more shocking, because you had some sort of connection with that, whereas bodies you have no connection with. It's hard to believe.
Do you have
that's
to...
real...
I always think, even when, Jane, when you describe some of the things that you've reported on, how do you detach yourself from that and continue to tell the story without feeling completely overwhelmed by the situation?
You've just got a job to do. I don't know whether you would say the same, Jane. You just know you're there to do a job, and that is to try and get the information and to try and relay that to people and try and get it back to your team back at the office. Though I have to say, I did lose it a couple of times, and I had a much older editor who was brilliant, and he was on the... I remember him on the phone to me, David Scott. He was wonderful. He said, "Right, now calm down. Calm down, just tell us what you can see, you'll be fine." and he really... Because I was like that, you know, because it was...
Well, but we see that every day here with you. You stay as cool as a cucumber no matter what's going on. You
apart from today, when she's doing this.
And I mean, we're running out of time, but you've had such a varied career. Scotland Today, where you work with Michael Gove, you always say is adorable and funny. You had your Scottish Women. Also, you had your own show called Kaye for the BBC.
Yeah, I've been around a while.
Oh, and look at you there. And of course, Loose Women for the last 22 years.
I know. I still remember where I was when I got a phone call to say there's this panel show with 4 women they want to do. Oh, we've run out of time, unfortunately.
Oh, is that our time? Well, we can't talk about it.
That is it. No.
I watched that like I was at home.